Greetings, dear friends, fellow programmers, and those aspiring to be. Today, I have another very exciting topic for you where we will be covering extremely interesting techniques to improve the performance of your database communication inside of ASP.NET Core projects. So, if that sounds like fun to you, I highly recommend to sit down, prepare a cup of coffee, and enjoy the video, because today we will be discussing explicit loading and projections. If eager loading and lazy loading concepts from the previous video are not everything you expected to learn and you still want to expand your horizon, I think this video will be very nice and beneficial to you. As in the previous video, I have enabled logging for Entity Framework, so we would be able to go through all the queries that are being executed against the database. That way, we will have hands-on control on everything that is happening in our application. First concept for the day we're going to talk about are going to be projections. So, what are projections in ASP.NET Core and Entity Framework? Well, imagine the following scenario. You have a very complex entity that has maybe 20 properties attached to it, or 100, it doesn't matter, and you actually need for a certain action only a couple of them, only 3, let's say. And you need to fetch everything in order to have the information you need, because your previous knowledge allows you just to fetch entire rows from the database table. But that is going to create a lot of overhead, both in memory and hardware expenditure, which is not necessary because you do not need most of the data that is being fetched from the database. So, projections is what is going to help you out in this area and allow you to fetch only the data, explicit parts of data, you would actually like to fetch from the database, which is, as you probably know already, going to result in way better performance of our application. Let me show you how it works. The first thing we need is to create a data transfer object, or DTO, which is going to contain only the data we actually need. And in our case, I just entered random 2 properties, the first one being customer name and the second one order count, which is actually number of orders created by this customer. So let me show you that customer has 2 regular properties, ID and name, and we decided we do not want to fetch the ID, we just want name, and instead of orders, which is a list of other entities from orders database table, we just want to know the number of orders that are there. So we need to be smart and figure out a way how we're going to execute this. We have created this DTO, or data transfer object. Now we just need to populate it with data. And this method right here is going to do exactly that. We have the following. We are fetching from our DB customers, basically all customers, and then using select LinkU method, which is going to allow us to map each customer into a customer DTO. So we are transforming each customer entity, so this right here, into customer DTO, so this right here. And we want to do it so that the customer DTO name is populated with customer name, and also order count is populated with customer orders count. What do you think is going to be executed right here? I hope you figured out that we will need to actually fetch number of orders that are created for every particular customer. So let us run the code and see what happens. The part we are interested in is the script generated. What we are doing is we are selecting just customer name from the customer's database table. But at the same time, we have another nested select, which is going to count all orders where customer ID is equal to order customer ID. And we want to map it into order count property. So when that is executed, we should end up with a list of customer DTOs populated with customer name and order count. What this teaches us is that Entity Framework and its projections feature are very, very beneficial and can allow us to have a very fine-grained control over what we want to fetch from the database, because as you saw in the script, we did not fetch customer ID. Even though we had it at our disposal, we do not pull it out from the database because we said we do not want it. So Entity Framework did not want to waste any resources that were not necessary. And in the end, that means that projections will allow us to be very flexible and explicit about the data we want to fetch and how we want to fetch it, and also include some calculations if needed. My goal here is to share only very essential features that I use in my day-to-day life as a developer, and the things that I've gained and learned over years of experience, so that you would basically gain an unfair advantage, because you will be spending a very small amount of time enjoying, hopefully enjoying, the videos that I'm filming right here. And that way, extend your professional knowledge and experience substantially. And now, while we're on the subject of having explicit control over things, I think is the best moment ever to discuss the topic of explicit loading. So, what is explicit loading? It is a concept that allows us to specify explicitly which properties we want to have loaded for us. It is a very similar concept to lazy loading, but it does not require any external libraries like proxy library, and also it will be very control-like. So you will have explicit control over the properties you want to have fetched from the database. If you did not specify that certain properties should be fetched from the database, they will not be fetched. It's not the same scenario as with lazy loading, because with lazy loading, everything will be done under the hood. You will not be aware of the fact that your application is communicating with the database and fetching data when you just stated that you want to do something with some property. In this case, that will not happen unless you have explicitly stated that you want certain data to be fetched. I think the best way to explain this is to use exactly the same code base that we used in lazy loading in order to understand what are the differences between the two concepts. So let me again put a breakpoint right here to see when we fetch our customers. As you can see right here, we still have not executed any queries, but when I go through this line and execute it, we have received our customers, which means that we have executed a select statement. After that, we are entering our for each loop and going through all the customers one at a time. Now, the list we have right here of actions is going to be a bit different. We are explicitly stating that for the entry customer, so this one customer, we want a collection from that customer that is orders. We will basically do the following. We know that our customer has a list of orders and it's a collection, and we want to fetch that list of orders for this specific customer. And then we just use load async method. And this will, in the end, generate a new SQL script that is going to fetch all the orders for this specific customer and load it for us. And when we take a look, right here is exactly the same script that was executed while discussing lazy loading. The only difference is the fact that right now we had to explicitly state that we want to load this collection of orders. In the lazy loading scenario, that was not the case. We just entered to list async for our orders, and Entity Framework immediately said, aha, I need orders, fetch them for me. In this case, we had complete control, and without this line, nothing would happen. But again, when I execute the rest of the code base, you will see that we again have bothered the database quite a lot. We again executed a whole bunch of queries for each of our customers. Basically, for each customer, we execute a separate query, which is extremely bad practice. So As was the case with lazy loading, you have to be very careful how you use this functionality. But that does not mean it's not beneficial, because it is in certain scenarios. You just need to be able to make informed decisions. And when you do that, everything will work perfectly fine. Everything will do exactly what you want it to do and nothing more than that. So now, I think it is the perfect moment to end this video, because we learned a lot. It's time to relax a bit and maybe try one of these methods in action. Thank you for watching and happy coding!